Woman here, and are you still not subscribed to Matt's channel? Well, if you're not, hit the subscribe button because he's giving out free picks each and every week. Hope you have a good rest of your day.
UFC is back in Paris this week after a week off, and we have a sneaky good card. I'll be discussing the main card like usual, guys. Break down the fights, provide free picks, leans, price talk, fades, and more. SystemSportsCapping.com or link.me/systemcapping to get my client card for this week. Over there, you got updated records, client comments, resume, and more. Quick thoughts on some UFC Noche fights and just a card in general. I expressed it on Twitter. If you guys do follow me over there, I was very impressed with the main card tributes and the movies that they did in between the fights and how they incorporated the fighters. I thought that was super cool. Obviously, in the prelims, nothing was going on, right? It was like everyone was worried, right? It was like a blank red type of dome in the beginning there, but obviously crazy expensive for those graphics and to do all that, so they limited it to the main card. I do believe it was something that would have been a lot cooler in person than on TV. Still cool on TV, don't get me wrong, but in person I think that would have been a great experience. Probably something I should have went to. I didn't really know what to expect. Obviously, the ticket prices wasn't the issue. Obviously, they were crazy overpriced. So, do you want to, end up spending that? That wasn't the issue. It's just I wasn't able to get out to Vegas at that time. Even though I usually do go in September. This September, I didn't due to getting a new place. So, I'll be back out there. I don't think they'll do that event again. I don't see them doing that event again, at least anytime soon. Yeah, I could see like a boxing fight get in there with Saudi Arabia. Remember, Saudi Arabia was a big backer of this, right? They were a sponsor in this, right? Dana White needed them to complete this, right? This was a very expensive event to throw, so I don't expect us to see it again, if at all. Maybe boxing. I can see a big boxing fight go in there. Two main fights weren't that great, right? Not as exciting as the earlier fights on the main card, right? The Adi Osborne fight to open up the main card. The fight that, everyone discussed that why is it on the main card? It turned out to be a great fight, right? War. We got a war. And then the Zellhuber fight was probably one of the best fights I've seen all year, guys. What a fight between him and the Argentinian. Only loss, really. I had Zellhuber split decision loss. Overall, though, profitable card. We were able to profit slightly on the card, even though I was on O'Malley on the main event. Looking back at that fight, the O'Malley fight, obviously the way Merab was going to win was going to be that way, right? He was going to be able to have success with the takedowns. Wasn't able to control him a ton. But he was able to get some takedowns and kind of control the fight. I watched the fight back. Sugar Sean thought he won the fight when he watched it back. It was closer than people thought, right? Sean easily won round 5. I believe he won round 3 as well. And then round 1 was close. You have to slightly give it to Merab, though, because of submission attempts and some of the control that he had. But on the feet, technically, due to the numbers, Sean did more damage. He had the biggest shot in the round where Merab's head got pushed back. So there are some questions about, some 48-47, I think, is correct, right? One or two judges had it 48-47, and I agree with that. I think Merab did enough, but it wasn't some sort of domination, right? Some people are talking about, the fight, Merab dominated O'Malley. He didn't. If you look at the fight, Sean O'Malley had to be more selective with his shots, wasn't able to just come in and throw the big power shots because of the takedown threat, and that's what Merab does, right? That's what he's able to do, and that's why he's champion today, because he has that takedown threat, right? I also give him some credit. He was able to move well on the feet and avoid the big shots, bouncing around. Hard for Sugar Sean to get dialed in for a clean shot too. So, I gotta tip my hat to Merab there. He had to do exactly what he did to win that fight. Some fights that we cashed on, I had Ortega and Lopez to go the distance at plus money, and we're also on Bahamondes plus 110. That was a must bet, a ton of value there. I had Bahamondes when I do my own lines favored in that fight, so we got a good value there on Bahamondes. And due to hitting the plus money winners, we were able to profit on the night to keep the pay-per-view streak going. Next for O'Malley, obviously Merab being the champion now, it's not exciting. If he fights Umar, I believe Umar beats him, so it's going to be a short stint for Merab as champion. But I would love to see O'Malley and Sandhagen next. I would love that. Hopefully we do see that. Both coming off losses, but their styles should be great if they match up. Let's do a UFC update here, guys. 28-7 pay-per-view cards this year. 80%. Pretty much this year. I think this was started maybe in February. 80%, guys, on the year. Average line plus money. I'll talk about that here shortly. 51-26 all cards at 67%. 72% 2-5 parlays. This is going back 2023, guys. 2003 to 2024. Very happy with that. Just keep in mind, guys, average line plus money. These aren't just a minus 250 favorite or minus 300 favorite like some jokers out there, right? These are parlayed together. My 2-5 parlays are parlayed together, which equals usually plus money, right? Most of the time, you're getting plus money if you put two favorites together. And I count that as one bet. Just a great, very successful year. Every year is profitable in the UFC, and most years are very good. This year has been very, very impressive to myself, to the system, and we just continue to grind each week to beat the books. Let's get right into this card, guys. Let's get right into this card. Paris. I feel like they're going to Paris a lot, right? Like twice a year almost. Weren't they just there? I feel like they got some fighters. So I understand. Right, I understand why they're going out there. They got a good list of fighters. We'll see Mose here. We won't see Gon. I don't know what Gon's doing. I think he's a movie star now. I don't know what is going on with that guy. But we're going to see a lot of the main attraction guys from France, and I'll talk about them here shortly. Let's get right into it, guys. Shop around. Like I always mention, shop around. Have multiple sports books. Get the best price out there. Books vary. Props vary. Have multiple books, guys. Saint Denis minus 275 versus Moicano plus 225. Books aren't too worried about that Poirier loss. Big price here on Saint Denis. I get he's fighting at home. Is coming off that bad loss to Poirier. Keep that in mind. Some people always have concerns coming off a bad loss, coming off a knockout. I think UFC rushed him a little bit too soon to the top, right? You're throwing him right to Poirier from the guys he was fighting previously. That's a big step up, right? And it showed there in his fight. The IQ was kind of questionable, but there was reasons for that, which I'll talk about here shortly. Moicano, he's on a nice little win streak here, right? That's why he's getting this big fight. 3 nice wins in a row over Riddell, Dober, and Turner. What do those guys have in common, guys? Right? Struggle with takedown defense, not great grapplers, right? Keep that in mind, guys. That's why we're seeing this price here, right? Moicano's not going to have that success taking the fight down like he has been against his previous 3 wins, right? Right, price is big here. I agree Saint Denis should be favorite. I do my own lines before looking at the Vegas lines. I always suggest to do that, guys. Me doing the lines, I'd say Denis 2-1 favorite, yes. But minus 200, I had it. Minus 220. I had it in that range. It's a little juiced up here, minus 275 in my opinion. The UFC's putting this card around him. They like the matchup for him as well, just like most people do. Me being one of them. When Moicano has that wrestling and grappling advantage against his opponent, yeah, I love him. I love him, especially you get a good price on him. Moicano's always live in those markets. Here he would have to somewhat maybe catch him with a submission type when Saint Denis probably tries to go for a takedown. But Saint Denis can also just keep this on the feet, right? He can keep this on the feet and use his boxing skills, but mix in some of the takedowns as well, right? They need... Saint Denis is excellent with his takedown average, over 4. Very good submission game as well, right? Along with Moicano, though, he is going to have to be careful if he decides to grapple and get this fight down on the ground, because Moicano is somewhat live to pull off a submission. Very good jiu-jitsu, Moicano. Right? But when usually you see high-level grapplers facing off once another, you end up seeing the fight play out on the feet. And that's what you're probably going to see here, right? Which I would have to favor Saint Denis. Not high on Moicano's striking. His chin is questionable as well. We saw him just get rocked by Turner, right? Saint Denis does have some heavy hands, right? And Saint Denis looked excellent, I believe. He won that first round against Poirier in the biggest fight of his career. However, the game plan wasn't what you wanted in the second round, and he kind of gassed out in that fight, and I think there was some reasons for that. Now, after the fight, he did say he had staph going into the fight. He couldn't train for a certain amount of time, and he also was sick from the staph infection. So this is what he says. You do gotta, take his word for it. I don't think he would just make that up. So that's why I think his game plan was to go in there and try to get the fight finished quickly, because he wasn't going to be able to last longer or play out, a Poirier type of fight where Poirier wants it to go deep, right? Saint Denis couldn't do that. He couldn't have that type of fight, so he went in there and tried to, just get a quick finish. And against Poirier, it's very difficult, right? You're not gonna get a quick finish on Poirier. So that's what I do believe. That's what I have completed my research to determine. 5-round fight here, guys, right? I can't really say that favors either guy. Now, I have seen Moicano struggle with cardio in the past. We have seen it. Right, he usually finishes fights somewhat early. That could be a concern if this fight goes later. Even though I don't believe this fight goes 5 rounds. I would be surprised if it goes all 5 rounds. The books will tell you that. You got to pay up for that if you like that prop. Fight not to go the distance. Definitely like that. Maybe under in the rounds as well. If you can get it, 3.5, 4.5 under. That's something I definitely would look at here. But yeah, difficult to see this fight go all 5 rounds. But I do slightly favor Saint Denis if it goes to 5 rounds, just because I have seen more issues with Moicano's cardio in the past. Moicano, we'll quickly talk about his stats, his skills. Striking is just average. He does have a little bit of power on his feet, and it has improved his striking. He's more of a grappler, right? We know that. He wants to get the fight down to the ground, but do you want to get down to the ground against Saint Denis? I would say no. I expect him not to be able to take down Saint Denis. If he does, is he going to do much with it? Is my question, right? Right? Moicano shines when he's able to out-grapple a guy. I don't see that happening here. I have to go with the hometown guy here if I were to bet this fight. Of course, the pricing makes it a little difficult, even though I'm leaning his way right now. Co-main. Good co-main here. And we also got the other French fighter that's making noise, right? Coming off a nice win over Cannonier Imavov, minus 210 versus Brandon Allen, plus 180. Another tempting dog price here, guys, right? Another tempting dog price. There is some value, like I mentioned, on Moicano, even though I do like the matchup for Saint Denis. I think Allen's more live here, right? I like Allen more if I were to bet a dog in one of these fights. It's just due to multiple reasons, which I'll touch on here. We got another French fighter, right? Fighting at home. So that's going to be an advantage most of the time for the home fighter. The travel issue too, right? Has Brandon Allen been able to travel, adapt to the time difference? Good enough to win this fight, right? Those are all things that you can't tell. You don't know, right? Unless you're maybe inside of his camp. So those are things that you do have to mention here, right? Like I mentioned, Imhoff coming off that nice win last time over Cannonier, right? Very impressive. Where I believe Allen needs to take this fight to win this fight is to the ground, right? Brendan Allen's very well-rounded. He does have some good boxing as well, good striking, even though the limited output. He does have some power in his hands, but sometimes what I feel like the IQ could be questionable, and he falls in love with his hands too much and then takes damage. You're the better grappler here, right? You talk about it. You say you're the best grappler in the division. Show it here, guys, right? Show it here, Team Allen. Show it here, Brandon Allen. Get this fight down to the ground, right? We've seen Imavov be taken down before. Not saying he has bad grappling, not saying he has bad wrestling, but Brandon Allen has the advantage in the wrestling and grappling department. Right? So that's why I see the value here at plus 180. It's hard for me to stay off it if I were going to bet this fight. Right? Mix it up. Make an MMA fight. Don't come out and try to outpoint Imavov. That's where you're going to lose the fight. I think Imavov's very good on the feet. I think his defense is good. I think he moves very well, picks his shots, and he does have a little power, some sneaky power. And don't get me wrong, takedown defense is fine. He can wrestle, grapple as well, but I have Allen as the better grappler wrestler here. Right? Even if you like him off, hard to bet him at this price. You know, I like him more in certain matchups. The Cannonier was a good matchup for him. Didn't have to worry about any grappling. Here, I do believe if Allen fights smart and the game plan should be mix up, try to get the fight down to the ground, Allen is very live to win this fight, guys. Now, this is the biggest fight of his career on the road in France. There are a couple concerns, right? That's why we're seeing the plus 180, right? Imavov has shown to be, a very good fighter, a top 5 fighter in this division. Quick note here, Imavov has been submitted before in the past. Outside of the UFC, I do have to mention. And we know Brandon Allen is a submission game. 14 submissions, guys. It's only 3 rounds. The submission may not come. I get that. Who does that really favor, the 3 rounds? I believe Allen. Especially if he can get the takedowns. If he can get the takedowns early, I think this 3-round fight does favor Allen here. The path is there for Allen. Secure the takedowns. Get those submission attempts. Land some big shots on the feet. If this fight stays as a volume-type striking fight, not good. Not good for Brandon Allen, in my opinion. Right? If this stays on the feet, Imavov most likely will squeak out a decision. We've seen Allen rocked a bit as well on the feet in the past. So let's try to avoid that, Allen. Right? Let's get this fight down to the ground, mix it up, make an MMA fight, and then you're not far from a title shot. You could be next. Right? Both these guys, winner of this fight is not far from a title shot. So let's see who wins this fight. Definitely some value here on Allen. Brito minus 280 versus Gomez plus 240. Not too many close matchups so far that we're talking about. No minus 110s, minus 150s. You got a favorite here, usually 2-1, high 2-1 against, guys that have value. And again, Gomez has a shot to win this fight at plus 240. It's another big price here. Guy fighting at home. Brito travel. How's he going to travel? But Brito, I believe Brito's better everywhere. Slightly better everywhere, right? He's going to have the wrestling advantage. He's going to be a lot stronger than Gomez. Resume advantage. Just very physical, Brito. Love watching him fight. Has that power on his feet as well. Maybe Gomez, he's a little maybe quicker on the feet. He moves well. Takedown defense is good at 80%, so it'll be interesting to see. Now, it's only 2 fights in the UFC, that 80%. So, just mentioning that. But Brito will look to get the fight down to the ground. Will that 80% defense from Gomez be good enough? Keep in mind the travel concern. I always have to mention it. The hometown fighter is Gomez. Right? Is Gomez. So keep that in mind. The plus 240 is live. I still have Brito winning this fight, 8 out of 10 times probably, right? So, yes, I do think Brito's better everywhere, slightly better everywhere. right? And if you look at Gomez's stats, just from a stat standpoint, it's not that appealing, right? Very low volume for a guy this low, this light, right? At under 3, the accuracy's below. That's under 3 significant strikes for you guys that aren't aware. Below 50% in accuracy, right? Burrito has the power on the feet. I'm not saying Burrito's very high volume, but he's higher volume than that, right? And then I think he is the better grappler in there, right? So again, I have Burrito winning this fight. Is it a sure slam dunk? No. Are any fights really? No. But like I mentioned, he should win this fight 8 out of 10 times if they fight. So, that tells me it's enough to back if I'm going to bet him. But then you got to look at the price, $280. And I do believe it's a difficult fight to call an outcome here. Very difficult. Is he going to win by finish, or is it going to go to the judges? If you look at history, a lot of Burrito's fights are finishes. So I would lean that way to get the better price. But you're taking a shot. You're taking a chance. Remember, Gomez's fighting at home. Maybe able to dance around enough to avoid the big shot from Burrito. And maybe that takedown defense does come in effect. And he's able to prolong the fight to the judges. Brian Battle, minus 175 versus Josette, plus 150. Interesting one here. Could be a good fight. Could be a sneaky good fight, guys. Josette only has 2 fights in the UFC. So some of these stats are juiced up a bit, guys. When I was looking at the stats, I have to always mention that. Right? When you have 1 or 2 fights in the UFC and you see high significant strikes, it's 1 or 2 fights, right? So in Josette's case, it's 8 significant strikes per minute. Now he's a kickboxer. He's going to throw volume. I get that. Battle only 4.5. 4.5 is not terrible. It's mid-tier. Josette, also French. However, he does fight out of City Kickboxing. Keep that in mind, in New Zealand. But he does have a French background. You can tell by the last name, Josette. Right? Josette also has some takedown ability, and I think that's where he could win this fight. If this is just a striking battle on the feet, we're flipping coins here. And you can maybe even lean Battle. We've seen Battle win those type of fights. But this is where I think Josette could surprise Battle. Battle's takedown defense is poor at 46%, guys. 46% takedown defense, and Josette does mix it up. We have seen him use takedowns. He's very strong, is what I noticed from watching his tape. I believe that's where he could win this fight. Mix it up. It's an MMA fight, guys, not a kickboxing fight. You try to tell these guys all the time, right? If it's a kickboxing fight, you're winning on points. Who lands a bigger shot? You're flipping coins. But if you're mixing it up, getting the takedowns, and you can, maybe a submission attempt, controlling them on the ground, you're stealing rounds, right? So that's why I think Josette is live here at plus 150. I think a lot of underdogs this week are live, guys. You just got to take shots on which ones you think could win as an underdog price. I think he's live here. Again, both guys are traveling. I think Josette, like I said, I don't think he was in France. Maybe he went to France a little earlier than Battle because he probably does have home roots there, but he's not really one here because, like I mentioned, he trains out of New Zealand. Right? So keep that in mind here. Very live here. He's 2-0 in the UFC. You said I do believe the matchup is good as long as I mention, and I stress it, make it an MMA fight and not just a kickboxing fight. Flip a coin if it's a kickboxing fight. Cherrier minus 700, yikes, versus Miranda plus 500. Huge price here. Another French guy, another French fighter. A poor record though, right? 19-10. A little older fighters coming off a loss to Mariscal. Mariscal is very good, by the way. But Cherrier was able to put on his takedown defense. Very good takedown defense. In that fight, 1 for 6, Mariscal. That could play in a factor here because Miranda's going to look for that, right? Not super high on Miranda, right? He's 1-1 in the UFC, limited. Coming in, he's an older fighter. Not a great record either. Does have decent power on the feet after watching tape. Low volume, though. But he does average a lot of takedowns, over 4. Again, limited sample size, but averaging over 4 in the 2 fights. I do believe, though, he's not going to be able to take down Cherrier. And that's why we're seeing the big price here. Cherrier is going to be the much better striker. Tough travel spot for Miranda, too. Of course, his price is off at minus 700, though, right? minus 700 for the 19-10 fighter who's coming off a loss. Of course, Miranda could win this fight. This price is just, you can't bet it. You can't bet. And of course, it's always tough to call an outcome. Even though I lean the finish here, most of their fights, there is a finish. It's just very difficult to bet this type of fight at minus 700 unless you're going to take a shot on Miranda plus 500 for a smaller unit. Wouldn't call you crazy because I do believe the line is slightly off. Slightly off. Keep that in mind. Tough to call an outcome here, guys. Tough to call an outcome. Lean the finish here. But this fight I am passing on. Fun one to open up the main card. ZM minus 125 versus Rolla plus 100. There's an even fight. There's a fight we don't have really a dog in. But, I'm definitely interested a little bit in the underdog, if you want to call it that, plus 100 in Forvola. Again, travel, right? How is he going to travel over there? Love the camp he trains out of with Merab and Sterling. So he's going to have the grappling advantage and wrestling advantage if he uses that, if he decides to use that. We've seen Forvola fall in love with his hands. He does have some power on his feet. He has knocked out some guys. He's been in there with the better guy. He fought Saint Denis after that 3-fight win streak, right? He went on that 3-fight win streak and then fought Saint Denis. That's a tough matchup, right? Ziam also on a sneaky 3-fight win streak, right? Before he was struggling in the UFC, his chin was questionable. Takedown defense also a bit questionable. Fun fact between these two, both these guys lost to McKenny, of all people, of all fighters. Both these guys have lost to McKenny. I find both these guys very difficult to predict from fight to fight. That's why we're seeing this number, guys. Very difficult to predict how these guys will come out, because I believe their IQs could be questionable at times. Forvola likes to just kind of sometimes go in there and, swing for the fences and just kind of be a wild man in there. And sometimes you don't want money on those type of guys, right? You don't want money on those guys that, try to just go in and look for that big power shot and not use your wrestling and grappling. He's going to have that advantage here. And I'm sure Ray Longo, Merab, Sterling should be telling him that, right? They come from a wrestling background, those guys. Forvola can wrestle. We've seen it in the past. Ziam, low volume, right? Very low volume at under 3. Right? The defense, 65% is impressive. When he does get, he has to be a high defensive fighter, because when he gets hit, I don't think his chin's that great. Don't think it's that great. But he can move well on the feet. Does have some length too, kind of bounce around. And I do think he's improving. He's continuing to improve, yeah. He's fighting at home as well. That's going to factor in here with that 3-fight win streak. Forvola is live here at plus money to win, but he has to fight smart. You're taking a shot, right? I lean Forvola. Is it going to make my client card? No. But guys, there are some live underdogs on this card. Even in the prelims, there's some live underdogs. So if you like betting underdogs, this could be the week. You're going to have to bet against some French fighters, but that's okay. Look at the Mexican fighters last week. Even though it wasn't in Mexico, the theme was Mexico, but not all the time. I know in Canada one time, the card was in Canada. I think all the Canadian fighters lost. So, sometimes it doesn't really, there's pressure. There's obligations when you're in France, more media, more family. So, sometimes it's not that big of a deal for the fighters fighting. It is a big deal, for fighters fighting at home due to extra obligations. So keep that in mind. Like I always say, guys, bet smart and know your limits. Enjoy this card. Should be a good one in Paris, France.